We're live and recording. Hello and welcome, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay. We just had a moment of connection issues. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you were joining us for our third Screen New South Wales webinar. This one is called What Makes a Competitive Development Application? My name is Andrea Ulbrick. I'm a writer-director myself. I'm one of the Screen Investment Managers here at Screen New South Wales. So I'd like to begin this morning where we always should, which is by acknowledging and paying my respect to the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered today. For me, it is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have joined us today. Thank you so much. I'm joined this morning by Senior Manager of Screen Investment, Sally Regan. Hello, Sally.
Good morning, everybody.
Sally has more than 30 years' experience working in the screen production sector. She's produced film and television in Australia, Europe, Asia, America. Sally joined Screen New South Wales in August 2017 as a Senior Manager, Screen Investment. Previously, Sally spent 5 years as Drama Investment Manager at Screen Australia. And what we always say about Sally is that she knows where all the bodies are buried and she knows who's holding or hiding the murder weapons. So beware. And we also have Mike Jones.
Thanks, Andrea, I think.
Mike is Head of Development and Content at Every Cloud Productions. He's an experienced script producer, story editor, writer. His work has garnered numerous accolades and awards. Prior to joining Every Cloud, Mike worked with companies including the ABC, Princess Pictures, Warner Brothers, Sweet Potato Films and Jungle. His recent collaborations include The Gloaming for Stan and the incredible supernatural series The Kettering Incident for Foxtel, which I loved. He's also a published horror novelist in his spare time. You might not know this, but he is very tall, and you'll probably find out very soon he speaks very, very fast.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, he does. Before we get started, I'll run through just a bit of housekeeping. While I do this, I invite you to introduce yourselves to each other in the comments box. I could see Julia Morris there before. Tell us where you're logging in from and what part of the screen industry you're in and what you do. That way we can all get to know each other a bit. So just a few points. This webinar does have live captioning. This is provided by AI Media. To access, you will see a link below the video that says click here for live captioning. The webinar is being recorded and will be available afterwards for playback, but only when we get to the end. Crowdcast is best viewed through Chrome. So if you're having a bit of problem or it's a bit glitchy, we suggest that you log out and come back in via Chrome. The chat function is available for you to connect with each other. Amelia and Danny from Screen New South Wales are there in the chat box, and they'll be providing handy hints, and they'll be sending some links. So whenever we talk about a link, you'll be able to see it there and you'll be able to access that link later. So there will be lots of resources. I won't be monitoring the chat as much, but if you would like to ask us a question at any time, what you can do is in the Ask a Question section down the bottom down there, just type in your question and others can actually vote for your questions. So the more popular the question, the more likely it will be. It prevents everyone asking the same question. We will be having a Q&A at the end, so we're going to go for about 45 minutes and then about 15 minutes Q&A if you're all up for it. This is our third series of webinars, the Screen Connects series. We're busily plotting and planning some more for you, so please stay in touch with us. Make sure you subscribe to Screen New South Wales via e-news. Now, just on connecting with people, who have we got here at the moment? We've got Rodrigo Vidal-Dawson. Hi, Rodrigo. We've got Joanna Beveridge, who's excited to be here. Matt Graham, Matthew R. Young, as I said before, Julia Morris. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay. I reckon we should get started. I think we'll start with Sally, seeing that you're Senior Manager. Why don't we get you to talk us through perhaps some of the at least two of the new initiatives we've introduced since COVID-19, just to help guide and support people. We've got some exciting initiatives underway.
Okay. Well, what we did at Screen New South Wales was try and work out how best we could help the filmmaking community, established and emerging and everything in between. And obviously, because there's not much production happening, though there is, the good news is there's still a little bit, and Australia's leading the way globally, which is great in getting people back out and working again. So we decided we'd put most of our energies and finance into development. So we have one-on-ones, which is where you can go to our website, and Amelia will be putting the link up to where you can go, where you can book a one-on-one with myself and the Screen Investment and Development team. We are a lean, mean fighting machine. It's myself, Andrea, Bobby Romeo and Sophia Golan in the investment space. And we have also Slate Development, which is a brand new initiative, which is up to 4 projects, $100,000, and that's mainly for established companies. But the good news is it means that other development funds in early and late stage development that we'll be talking about are more available for people in the emerging space or people with one-on-one projects. So that's pretty much our new stuff. We're very excited about it, and we're very happy to assist the sector in any way we can.
Sally, maybe it's time to just remind people about what we can and cannot fund, and maybe mention some of the amounts that we've got available.
Okay, well, basically we can fund pretty much any genre and any platform, feature films, webisodes, TV drama, VR, which is very exciting. We put a lot of energy and effort into VR through our 360 Visions initiative and also through the 360 Visions conference last year. So the only thing that we really can't fund unless it's through an active initiative are short films. However, we do fund, as I said, webisodes. So anything that really has a key and clear pathway to audience, we will fund. Typically, we have about, we provide in early stage development, which is, you know, anything from very beginning stage, taking a concept to an outline or a first draft. We can provide up to, it's generally between 5,000 and 25,000, depending on the ambitions of the project, what it is, the team, all of those other accessible criteria. And in late stage development, where you must have as a key eligibility marketplace, and that's either a letter from a broadcaster or a distributor or a platform or a VR distributor, one of those, and that is anything from, you know, 10 to 50,000, depending on what the requirements for that are. That's when it's really close to going out to marketplace and getting financed.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sally. Before I jump in and ask you another question, I can see we've got screenwriter and editor Rachel Laverty here from Sydney. We've also got Beverly, who's a developing writer-director from rural northern New South Wales. So welcome, guys. So, Sally, one of the big questions we get asked a lot is what is the difference between early and advanced development? Might be good to clear up any misconceptions here.
Okay. As I've just mentioned, early stage development is the very, very beginning, as early suggests, and advanced development is when there's actually marketplace attachment, and that is, as I've just explained, it could be a letter of offer from a distributor in feature film, or a TV drama, a letter from a broadcaster or a key platform like Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or Stan or any of those. And in VR space, it can be from a distributor, or even in the case of where a project has had interest on, say, YouTube, which is not really considered marketplace because they don't pay advances. But the reality is, if you can prove that you've got an audience, a substantial audience, and you know you've done a project before and you basically have a viewership and a direct line to your audience, that's pretty much where late stage development fits in.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Sally. I think now's a good time to call Mike. Mike, you've been down in the trenches of development. You've made stuff. You've been in writers' rooms. You've also been on the other side of the fence as an assessor. Maybe we'll talk about a few tips just to help people maximise their opportunity. How best can they really make their application most competitive. The one we talked about the other day was making sure that the documents that you must attach to your application, make sure they really speak to each other and they're not just repeating what one document said to another.
Yeah, look, there's having seen a lot of pitches, read a lot of applications, and sort of been across, you start to see patterns emerge about what makes a good application, what doesn't. And the key thing for me is first to recognize that putting forward a good proposal for development investment is kind of the same as making a good pitch. They're in the same headspace. So it's about distilling your idea, being focused, being clear. And that really starts with the documents in terms of putting in a proposal to, say, Screen New South Wales. It starts with a clarity of the documents you put together. And this might seem really simple, but because it's a number of separate documents, there's a story outline, then it's about the creative team, and then there's about financing and audience, all these categories you've got to fill. It's important to see them as one whole and that the assessor's reading them all together. And too often I'll see applications that come in where each document is simply restating what the previous document says, or it's out of kilter. It seems like it's written by someone else. And that might seem obvious, but try and treat the application as a whole and that it's telling one story, a story of this idea that's going to go to these people. They're going to care for this reason. We're going to finance it this way, and so on. And like I said, follow the bouncing ball. So make sure that anyone who's reading it is reading something that's really coherent as a whole. It seems obvious, but you'd be amazed how many applications I've seen that feel like they're written by 5 different people.
And you also mentioned the concept of inverting the pyramid to make sure that the key point of why this person or why the applicant, that this is their passion project, that they don't bury that down and make that the last point.
Yeah, this is, again, I'd say this comes back to pitching. One of the things I've found very, very useful, and I try to bring it into all the writers' rooms and development process I run, is not treating that short synopsis, that log line, the distillation of the story is something you do right at the end. My thing is something you do all the way along. It might be the first thing you write, that short one paragraph about this. You do some work, you work with your collaborators, which might be a writer's room or just a producer or just your friend you're making a project with. And once you've fleshed it out, then you bring it back down again. And each day, try and write that short, succinct document, because what will happen at the end of that process, if you've written that short statement a dozen times throughout the process, it'll be second nature to you. So if we meet at an event and I say, hey, pitch me your project, and you'll just go, bleh, because you wrote it 10 times last week. So that's a really good start. But the same applies to the application. And I see a lot of projects that are written like an upside down pyramid, and it's sort of guaranteed to fail. And that's where you start really wide with a big concept and lots of detail. And I have to read 5 pages to get to what the story really is. And it's really important to go the other way, that the first 5 lines of your pitch, of your proposal, should tell me exactly what that project is. Let me get to the detail later. I see a lot of applications where they're filling me with all this conceptual, intellectual, here's the reasons I wanted to make it. And I'm like, that's great, but I don't know what it is you're making. And for me, that comes down to some really simple fundamentals. The dramatic question, like every story is based on making the audience care. We want to care. We like to worry as audiences. So your first job is to give me an idea that will make me worry about the outcome. And that's the dramatic question. Will X be able to do Y or else Z? Where X is the characters, Y is the thing they've got to do, and Z is what's going to go bad if they fail. And if I've got that in the first paragraph, no matter what it is, you'll have my attention and I'll be willing to read the detail.
But
it's
a great point.
Right up front.
I think it's also important to remind people that the person that is assessing the application, and that's me or it might be Sally, needs to really understand it. So we could be your best friend and we could advocate the project for you as best we can, because we don't want to fall down at the first question, which is what happens next, which is, I don't know. So it's really good to remember that your first audience is your assessor. Make sure they understand what's happening, that they understand the genre, that they understand why you want to make it, that where you've been before, who you've got on your team. It really is about that holistic package, isn't it?
Yeah. And being succinct.
And what?
And being succinct, being tightly clear. Don't waffle.
That's right. So maybe what we'll do is think about or flesh out some questions around finance itself in applications with Sally. Sally, when people are thinking about building their development budget, some of the questions are, what can I include? What details should I include in the finance strategy? And how much detail is needed in a marketing strategy? Can you tell us more about that?
I can, but first of all, one of the things I'd like to pick up that Mike said is he does, it's very clear to make sure you know what you're making. But my biggest point, and I'm sure it's the same for all three of us, is, and who is it for?
Yeah.
Who wants to, and that helps. That helps everybody. I guess we can pick up on that later. But in terms of
I reckon
budgets,
keep going on that point, because it is so incredibly important, and it's a really good tip.
Yeah. Well, I guess the point is, and you would probably see this, Andrea, with the stuff that, with the projects we get to assess, and also with Mike in your role at EveryCloud, when people send you pictures at an early stage and they say it's a universal audience, everybody from 8 to 88, as much as I would love to say, wow, that's fantastic, unless it's Mary Poppins or something along those lines, I don't believe that's ever possible. And particularly in these days of, streaming and diversification, audiences are becoming far more fractured and diverse in terms of specialisation and where you can go to see stuff. So it's basically really important that outside of knowing what you're making, it's why and for who. It's the who, what, why, when, and who. So they're obviously the most things. And if you can't answer those questions for yourself, go back and have a little bit more of a rethink, I think.
Yeah. And
I couldn't agree more, Sally. And it for me, it comes in two places. And thinking as a development producer within a company, effectively anything you pitch to me, I've got to pitch onto a network. So I'm always thinking about, how do I on-sell this essentially, and how do I develop it? And that question of who the audience is kind of comes in two facets. On one hand, it's who the end audience is. And I find it just as a tip, some way I find to think about how to write that, how to articulate in a paragraph who your audience is sometimes to think about where they are rather than just who they are. So instead of just an age and a gender, they're over this age and they're female skew, whatever it is. Think about what other shows do they watch, what other websites do they visit, what kind of news do they read, where do they hang out on a weekend. If you get a sense of profile of where they are, you can write much more articulately about who they are. At the same time, you've also got to know the network. So if it's TV, you've got to know who this is. It for ABC? Is it for Stan? Is it for Seven? They have incredibly different tastes, and that's true in the online space as well. So really knowing not just who the end viewer is, but also who that intermediary you're going to have to work through is as an audience.
Sally, I've got a question here from Danielle Brigham, who we know. Hi, Danielle.
Hey, Dee.
She says, Sally, can you speak more to the question of why are you making it? I think it's about passion for a project. It needs to come through.
Yeah. We see, as Andrea would agree, at Screen New South Wales, an awful lot of passion projects, which are, they're wonderful and they're brilliant, but apart from, getting your story out, which can obviously, when there's authenticity, and joy in a story or a reason to actually say it, it speaks to a universal. But sometimes passion projects grow beyond a point where they actually should be made. And particularly, unfortunately, in the difficult times in the documentary space, there are little short programs that kind of grow into feature docs that maybe are only worth 20 minutes. So it's really, beyond that being your passion project, and you want to, you've got an impact idea about, climate change or any reason to get a story out to change people's minds or motivate people or tell a story of common honesty. Sometimes the motivation can be as simple as, I want to grow a career. I want to be a TV drama producer, and that is absolutely a fine motivation. Sometimes it can be, I want to do this webisode because my friends think it's funny, my nana thinks it's funny, and it is funny, so therefore I want to make it. It can be something as simple as, I want to raise an issue of racism or, cultural diversity. If a project has authenticity behind it, I think it finds itself really easy to be made and really easy to be told. Is that what you mean, Danielle? Did I answer adequately?
Or, I think that's very comprehensive, Sally. I've got another question here from Liam Burke. Liam, I might ask Mike this one. So Liam's asking, I have adapted a famous Australian play for the screen. How long should my treatment be, or will or will the success of the play speak for itself to a degree? So either Mike or Sally, or you might both want to have a pump at that one.
Yeah, look, I'll jump in and say that adaptation of an existing material, a piece of IP that has some marketplace appeal is a great start. Clearly a great start. The adaptation process can be really tricky creatively, so don't underestimate that. Clearly, a play put on screen is not the right answer. It needs an adaptation. But the value of that project's marketplace appeal, how popular that project is, obviously counts for a lot. In terms of, though, your pitch, you really need to treat it, and the document that goes with it, you need to treat that as a unique proposition. So not simply, we'll make this because the stage play is being huge. You want to be able to say, this is a great adaptation because it's cinematic or it suits this medium. It will adapt well for these reasons. It will draw on that audience. But be absolutely clear about why this is also going to grow that audience or get to a different audience or expand the reach. So don't use it as a crutch would be my answer. And that goes for adapting a novel or any other original source of IP. It's a head start, but it's not a crutch. And you need to make the case.
Another good place to go is we actually have a really good history in this country of adapting stage plays to screen. Sometimes they can be a little turgid, but often they're not. They're quite successful. Everything from Strictly Ballroom, which is a bit of froth and bubble, to Holding the Man, to Mark
Brand New
Colvin's
Day.
Kidney, which is being adapted at the moment, to Così fan tutti, to all sorts of things like that. So one of the things that I suggest you do, which is something that we're very passionate about, is be your own researcher. Get a hold of the play, and a lot of them, it doesn't cost you money to have to buy. They're online. You can get them from various places, and then have a look at the movie and see how different it is from the original screenplay. That's always a helpful thing. Dr. Google is your friend. That's always a good thing to do. And also there are other people that perhaps, we were talking about this, and maybe it's a good time where you can get a mentor. People like Tommy Murphy, who are amazing at adapting from stage plays to, he did Holding the Man, and he's readapting Mark Colvin's Kidney at the moment. He's a fantastic stage and screenwriter. So perhaps seek out people like that whose work you admire, and they won't mind going for a coffee with you and a bit of a chat because it's their passion, just like you guys.
That's probably a very good stepping point to the next issue that we were talking about earlier, Mike, is it's really important to know your team, have the right team for the application, but also have the right team in the writer's room. And tell us why that's so important.
Yeah, look, it's really important to think about, I think, about any creative project that you're making as a package. It's not one thing. And what's being judged, whether that's by a network you're taking it to a production company like us that you might be pitching it to, or to an agency that may invest in it, is that package together. And that will include obviously the story, but the process. Have you worked out how you're going to develop it, and so on? And of course, the heart of that is the team itself. And I confess that I've been having spent a good proportion of my life in writers' rooms of various sizes and shapes, from small projects to very large. The common problem I see a lot is the wrong assembly of people. It's too often you walk into a writer's room and it just feels like the usual suspects, or they just pick the best writers they knew or the best people, but not necessarily the best complementary skill set. And the analogy I'd use, not that I know anything about sport, but it'd be a little like having a football team with all front row forwards. It's not going to be very effective. And I think you need to think really clearly about your own skills audit. Look closely at what skills you have and what you don't, and make sure your partners, and when I say writer's room, that might just be you and your one collaborator, or it might be 10 people, depending on the scale of the show, from a web series to a big TV or a feature or a doco. Make sure that the people you're working with know things you don't know and can do things you can't do. Because when it comes to assessing a project, where in many ways, probably, and Sal, you can expand on this, is in many ways you're assessing the team as much as the proposal. Can this team do what they set out to do? And if I see a collection of people where I think they've all got the same skill set and they're missing things and they don't know what they're missing, that's a problem. And so I think it starts with a skills audit. It starts with a self-awareness of what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then find the people to fill the gaps.
Yeah, totally, Mike. I mean, I think we were saying before, if you're making a young adult project and you're all, like me, middle-aged and kind of, you know, at a particular stage,
Gorgeous.
you actually need young adults in your room. You need access to them. And I don't mean after the fact. I mean, you know, in the same way, if you're making a genre piece and you have nobody who actually understands the mechanism of genre, you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
So it's literally about, you know, knowing who needs to help you with what you need. And it doesn't have to be formal. It can be literally like, you know, if you're making a kids TV show, asking your kids if you've got them, or borrowing, you know, your niece or nephew or the kid down the road, or, you know, of course with appropriate adult supervision in that mix. You know, how does it work?
Yeah, that's so true. Maybe now's a good time for you, Sally. We've seen a lot of incredible Indigenous film and TV series in recent times. We've got Total Control, Mystery Road. Can you speak to the importance of having the right people on your team? If you're developing an Indigenous project, there are some key fundamentals that people need to understand.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's a saying that's, you know, not without us, and it's something at Screen New South Wales we're particularly mindful of. One, because if a non-Indigenous person tells a story that is Indigenous based and they get it wrong, that is, you know, cultural appropriation in its worst form. It's also insulting, not just in the Indigenous space, but any culturally diverse story. You know, if it's a story about Korean immigrants, obviously you need to have some Korean people in the writers' room, but particularly with Indigenous, it's not just you know, a bit of a consultant. If we see the word consultant, that sort of starts alarm bells. It's actually key collaborators. So and key collaborators are considered to be writer, producer, director. And, you know, perhaps I can throw to Mike because he's working on an Indigenous show at the moment. I believe you still are, aren't you? And the elements.
Balls in many courts.
Yeah.
Is a busy boy.
And
it
what
is,
that
and look,
means is it's actually something, and it's not just about, you know, cultural appropriation or insulting people. Again, it comes back to, it can only be of benefit to you because your story then has authenticity, and it is about, you know, honesty, and you know, we're all in it together, to borrow a horrible COVID slide.
Yeah. Look, I would see all this as don't see it as a barrier. I see it as absolutely an opportunity, because authenticity is everything, and not just that's always been true. Right now, in a world where Sally said audiences are fragmented and every audience is a niche audience. That's how we need to think about audiences now. Every audience is a niche audience. And Netflix have a saying internally where they say every show has to be somebody's favorite show. It doesn't have to win a time slot. It doesn't even necessarily have to rate that high. It just has to be someone's favorite show. Now, in order to do that, to stand out on YouTube, to be found, to land on SVOD, or even to cut through on commercial networks, you have to be someone's favorite show. The only way to do that is authenticity. It's the only way. A really good example is, I'm sure there's plenty of fans out there who are watching Nat's What I Reckon, his cooking specials from his home. It's the funniest shit you'll ever see. It's the best recipes you'll ever see. And what makes him a genius is just raw authenticity. I'll watch him till the cows come home because he's not pretending to be anything but himself. And you take that
and he's
and you potty mouth, and he's funny, but he's heartfelt. And you go, that's what every audience is looking for now. Not necessarily him, but that level of authenticity. So, for example, if you're going to do an Asian-inspired project, an Indigenous-based project, or it's drawing upon things, man, you've got to put him in the room or you're going to miss. And I'd say the same about genre. I see, and most people who know me know I'm a, you know, horror space, supernatural storytelling is where I live and breathe. And the thing I see all the time in all the vampire, zombie, ghost stories I get pitched, and I love them all, is too often they're pitched by people who don't know and love the genre. And the lack of authenticity is just palpable, and it stinks. It's like a big turnoff. So from culture to audience to genre, authenticity is everything.
Yeah. Well, we can go two ways.
And did you just see, sorry, Andrea, did you just see Jason ask the question, why would a non-Indigenous person want to tell an Indigenous story anyway? Great question, Jason. But I guess it's because the success of Indigenous filmmaking in the last, 20 years has come along in leaps and bounds. And I guess imitation is the greatest form of flattery. But again, you know, it is something that we are very, very aware of in every culturally specific community that, you know, and once that story has been told by a non-Indigenous person, it's not available to the Indigenous community to retell often. There's only space for a show, one of a show. So it's something that, you know, please, I encourage you to really, really think about that. From Indigenous, culturally diverse, you know, if you're working within the Chinese community or the Vietnamese or, you know, Greek or whatever, please make sure that you actually do have appropriate key creatives on the show.
And that speaks directly.
Can't say that enough.
Yeah, that speaks directly to Screen New South Wales. We have key priority areas that really, really matter. It's not just a box ticking exercise. Sally, can you talk about the origins and the way in which it's an incredibly meaningful part of your application? Yeah.
Well, it's been a long process for quite a few years, long before I got to Screen, and I think even before you, Andrea. So it's kind of, but it is evolving. It is something that we look at. We try and be a dynamic agency where we adapt to what's going on around us. So it's actually about shoring up, making sure that shows are told from a point of view that actually reflects our society. We are an incredibly multicultural society, so one of our key priority areas is culturally and linguistically diverse filmmakers. Of course, we are always trying to address gender balances with 50-50, you know, as many women as men. So we're working our way to that, and we're doing really well in some areas like TV drama because of attachments and various training programs that Screen and Screen Australia have run. There is actually probably now getting to the point where there's maybe even a few more TV drama directors that are female in the space. The area that we're lagging is feature film, and that's probably because feature film is, you know, falling behind anyway in this current environment. We also prioritise regional areas. So if you're in regional New South Wales, that's great. We want to see stories from those areas. We also prioritise regional New South Wales, I've said LGBTQI, because we love those stories and we love to see them told in an authentic way. We also prioritise Western Sydney, because not everybody lives on the fringes in New South Wales along the coastline. Did I leave anybody out?
Disability.
Pardon? Sorry. Oh, disability, yes. And on that area, we have a fantastic initiative called Screenability that we normally make films for people who come from a disability background. So, So all of these things, including our terms of trade, are absolutely published on our website very clearly as to who can apply, what you can apply for. So please make sure that we love to help you and we love to receive your emails and your phone calls. But most of all, we love it when you come with intelligent questions, like you've actually read the guidelines and you've read the terms of trade and you have a specific question for us. So I have a buzz saying that Andrea's probably sick of hearing, which is help us to help you. And that actually means please try and do a bit of your own research before you come to us.
So you're there, Mike.
There's no such thing as a dumb question, but there is a question where you haven't done the work behind it.
Yeah. So Mike, we seem to have lost your video, but we can hear you, which is a good thing.
Oh.
Yeah. Not sure.
I'm here and I can see you and my video's still on. It might have just turned it off for bandwidth. Yeah. It could be that the rest of my family members are all trying to host video calls at the same time.
Fantastic. So a question here for you, Mike, from David Doyle. He's asking, do you have any specific thoughts on developing children's content? Oh, he's gone.
He's gone.
I'm still
really
here.
Gone.
Oh, good. Great.
Good.
I'm going to try and turn your camera back on there.
Yes.
No, I can't.
Excellent.
Yeah, so do
you
want to
see you?
Can you see me and hear me now? Are we good?
Yes, all good. All good.
Wonderful. Was the question, I missed the question. Was it directed toward me?
David Doyle is asking if you've got any specific thoughts on developing children's content, apart from the fact, which is watch a lot of it.
Look, Not my area of expertise would be my short answer. I haven't worked in children's, and I couldn't speak with any authority, other than to say what I can say is that it's a challenging space because of where the commercial networks have landed in terms of quotas. And there's some argy-bargy around that at the moment. The ABC has consistently made really good children's content. What I have been involved with is more older skewing children's, because they're getting more into tween, teen, and young adult. And the thing I notice about children's content is people often miss the fact that it has an ambition to it in terms of audience. They view up. So, for example, very often if your characters are 10, 11, 12, it's being watched by 7, 8, and 9-year-olds. It's aspirational viewing for kids. And if anyone who's got kids will have noticed this. Once you get past Bluey and really little kid stuff, once you start to go up, it becomes aspirational. So if you've got 13, 14-year-olds now, they're probably all wanting to watch Umbrella Academy or Stranger Things, which are clearly not kids shows. They're much more complex than that and cross-generational. So my first tip there was, if you're doing children's, make sure you're genuinely either doing children's or are you looking at more tween older audiences, and how is that a multi-generational audience, and how is it an aspirational audience? How are your characters, your audience is actually watching characters older than them because they're the characters they aspire to. That tends to be a common pattern in that space.
Yeah. So we've got a question. You go, Sal.
I was just going to say, one of the things that you really need to do is make sure that you actually talk to a children's producer about the current environment, read the trades as much as you can. There's many free websites that you can sign up to. Probably these days in the marketplace, given the cost of producing children's, certainly children's live action as well as animation, is basically it will probably need to be a co-production. And so in that space, you really will need to get somebody who's actually worked in that space a long time to work with you and kind of give you maybe a guide or a hitchhiker's roadmap to how you might finance it, and that will tell you pretty much who your team needs to be as well as what your development needs to be. So it needs to be something that actually speaks to Australian children's voices in all their forms, in all their culturally diverse forms, but also is big enough and universal enough to sell to other marketplaces. So it's a bit of a high wire act to get it all right.
Yeah. So this
but don't give up. Good story.
Don't give up.
Always find a way.
That's a big tip.
Don't give up.
So this is for you, Mike. Recently, you were involved in an actor collaboration in isolation webinar. You were on last month. So John Kay is asking, do you think, and you were talking about it in the webinar with your colleagues, do you think what commissioners and broadcasters are looking for will change in a post-COVID or a post-quotas world? Let's just start with post-COVID world, and that's from John Kay.
Look, I think what everyone always wants to guess what audiences are going to want next. The first thing we've got to recognize is that anything you're potentially pitching or developing now is at best 2 years away. So even if you were to, greenlit today, you're really 2 years till you're on air or going up for theatrical release, unless it's supercharged. So you're really trying to skate to where that puck is, to where the audience is 2 years from now. Now, I absolutely believe that audiences...
Puck.
Yeah, don't skate to where the is. No, skate to where the puck is.
Ice hockey reference.
Not that I know anything about ice hockey. The key thing is recognizing that audiences constantly evolve and adapt to social change. And even if I go back to things like genres, if you do a sort of macro look at how genres evolve, crime fiction, even reality TV, horror, supernatural, science fiction, and so on, those genres evolve because of reactions to social climates. We're afraid of certain things in the world, so we make shows that react to those things. There's a reason why musicals were big in the Second World War, for example. There's a reason why the seminal Night of the Living Dead zombie films is about a nuclear satellite coming to Earth, but Danny Boyle's 28 Days about a virus getting loose, because what we're afraid of in 1967 is not the same as what we're afraid of in 2001. Now, that principle of audiences reacting means it's true for all kinds of things. What we're going to want to watch on the other side of COVID-19 is no doubt different to what we wanted to watch 3 months ago. What that is, though, is a complex question of, are people going to look for an escapist feel? What does escapism look like? Because escapism for me is watching The Exorcist. That's probably not everyone's idea of escapism. So it comes back to audiences are complex. They react to social climates differently. The job for you is to pick gaps. I'm far less concerned about picking trends as I am about picking gaps. So think, after this, what are we looking for? Take a punt on where you think that audience is going to be, and then measure it against where you think the networks are going. Who are the audiences they want to attract? And that's the strategy. And I think, if I can be slightly verbose about it, I think if you want to be an artist, paint and write novels. If you want to make film and TV, recognize that 100 people's jobs are on the line because of what you're going to write, and millions of dollars are potentially on the table. Yeah, way more. So what that means is you have to be responsible. You can't just make in the abstract. You can't just make because it's your pet baby. You have to make with a strategy of who this is for, where it's going, and how to engage them. Otherwise, you're pissing money in the wind. And I think that will help you understand how do you attract and deal with an audience on a post-COVID landscape.
What were some of the tips that were in, or suggestions about what people are looking for in that webinar? Because some of the writers were talking about stuff that really connects us, with stuff with beautiful wide scapes because we're being cooped up too much, nothing too dark, nothing too heavy. Well, I mean, what are your tips? Where do you think the audiences might go?
Look, my punt is that within the next 2 years, so in the 18 months to 2 years to come, anything that's a little too hard-edged to hard reality, like a political drama that evokes Donald Trump or something about a pandemic, is going to be on the nose. I know I wouldn't want to watch it, and sometimes your own litmus test is your best starting point. I'm going to be looking for something that just takes me away. But at the same time, I think frivolous will fall flat too, because I think in this age, with the changing way our audience, I look at my teenage daughter and how she engages with the world, I don't think people want to pretend that everything's okay. So there's a fine line to be trod there, and I think that's where most people I've spoken to have sort of landed. Escapism is one, but escapism means different things to different people. So pick your gap. Know what kind of escapism you're offering, but also recognize that 2 years from now, I was talking to a network head the other day who said, but 2 years from now, everyone could be right back on. I want a hard-hitting drama about politics because the pandemic will have passed. I think the one thing that you can say is I don't think anyone wants to see anything about a pandemic or any more COVID videos about making stuff at home. There's a brief window for that, and it's probably passed.
I don't know. I went back and watched Contagion and was like, for me, it felt like it read like a documentary. I was like, oh my
like comfort
God.
Food.
And then my whole conspiracy theory notions, which has kind of amused me for a while. But I think another thing to do, Mike, is look at the things that are popular and stood the test of time. Look at TV drama space of, what is, why is it that the most popular show in America is NCIS? What is that about? What is it about that Midsummer Murders is up to about season 55? Like, what is it? Why do those shows endure? Why do people want to watch that? And I think a lot of those shows that are enduring, they're a bit light, even though they purport to be about murder and crime. It's really about social justice, and they have very loyal audiences. So I think, again, it's literally about being your own best researcher. I can't tell you how many projects we get, and where people say, oh, this is for Netflix. They don't watch, the person doesn't watch Netflix. They don't know what's on Stan. They don't know what other portals there are. They don't subscribe. And it is absolutely, that's not going to help you. Stan, instead. When I used to teach, in the days where Mike and I used to teach together, one of the things I used to do every Monday morning with my students, and this is telling my age, we had the Sydney Morning Herald TV guide, and we used to go through and we used to count up how many shows were Australian, who made them, where they were broadcast on, and what slot. And if you can't answer that set for yourself, or literally with your own project, or know what's on there, or be, a square-eyed maniac, go to the movies when we can go back out again, see everything, know everything that's on, you're not doing yourself or your project any favors by not knowing any of those.
That's the job. That's part of the job description.
It is your job. Your job is to watch TV.
Yeah.
And I'd add one thing to that, which I think is really useful to pick up what you said there, Sal, is when we talk about genres, and that's really, when we're asking what audience is going to want, we're really asking what genres of shows they might be interested in. And I find it much more useful sometimes to think about genre as a feeling state and an expectation of how that show is going to make me feel. Because if we look at, say, NCIS and Midsummer Murders, we might say they're radically different. I would argue they're delivering the same emotional state. They both make me feel comfortable. They're both basically assured that justice will be served, and they're both light, even though they're dealing with murder. Both actually play light, and if you can understand that, you can get to the heart of how the show expects to make us feel, which is fundamental. We sit down in front of Netflix or go to the movies. The first question we're asking is, "Hey, what do you feel like watching?" Which is literally how I choose to feel tonight.
Yeah, and I think this is a good
which
point.
is what is your emotional state.
Sector, just to speak to documentary for a minute. When we're talking about genre and popularity and why stuff works, we know that true crime is always extremely popular because it's particularly factual, because it's true. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. It's got a good guy, a bad guy, and often, a body or many bodies. So if you're thinking about writing a new true crime factual series or even a one-off, watch what's on. It's just what we were saying before, and try and figure out how you can be more innovative, more distinctive. Don't copycat. You look at Barrenjoey Road from Wild Bear that was on the ABC a couple of years ago, the incredible The Jinx, the HBO series, or Tiger King, Making of Murderer. Look at what's working and how you can best really blow it up and try and push the parameters on style, tone, structure. I think that's just an expansion of where we were before. I've got a question for you, Sally. This one is from Ben Matthews, and Rachel has echoed that this is a great question. He's curious to know whether there are pathways for development funding for stories set overseas if key collaborators are from New South Wales.
Totally. It could be set on a spaceship, Ben. The only thing we care about is when it goes into production that New South Wales filmmakers prioritise producing and post-producing in New South Wales. So even if it is set in, say, Louisiana, maybe you could work out a way of shooting in Australia, New South Wales. We have an amazing locations team, part of the production attraction team. They're the team that bring you Marvel and all of those other big projects to the state. But they also provide location support and we have a database of over 300,000 photos. So it's literally, yes, you can. The main point is actually thinking when you are financing your project, whether it is actually possible to finance. If you're including Screen Australia in your finance plan, they have what they call the SAC test, which is significantly Australian content. And so, if you have a look again on the Screen Australia website and also have a look at the films that they've financed recently or productions that have been financed recently, both in the TV drama space as co-productions, official co-productions and joint ventures, which are about financing, and also projects, say, such as Cargo, which is not a New South Wales based project, but still a wonderful project that was all about Cambodia, but produced and pre-production and post in New South Wales. So, it's literally about thinking about what you're developing and how you're going to finance it along the way, and finding appropriate people that you can talk to that can assist you with that, Ben. And the other thing is we have a question about budget inclusions from Lee. And there was also a question as well about development from ACTF. I've seen that one's just voted by. So perhaps to answer those, sorry, Andrea, I feel like I'm doing your job, sorry. But for budget inclusions, yes, we actually, anything that makes sense for your project. If you're doing, say, VR development and you need to do some VR testing, that's fine to put that in early stage development, because that will work with your production methodology, therefore your storytelling mode, therefore it's all, you can't unpick one without the other. In early stage development, the things that are usually asked for are money for to take a concept to an outline, or an outline to a first draft, money for script editors. I cannot stress how much a project is assisted by a script editor. Otherwise, you're just, as Mike said before, in a room or a writer's room, like a banging gong, talking to yourself, or it's an echo chamber. You've got people who are like-minded who are going to tell you everything's great, when really you need an outside voice to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, that doesn't make sense. I need to, guide you in a particular way. So script editors, we joyfully pay for that. We cannot, unfortunately, because we have, it's important to note, 60% of the country of Australia's production community live and work in New South Wales. New South Wales' key priority is actually to grow New South Wales-based talent and businesses and build a sustainable film and television and VR or production community. So we cannot pay for any non-New South Wales elements. So if you have an international writer, unfortunately, we can't pay for them. If you have a Queensland-based writer and you're a New South Wales-based producer, we can't pay for them. So, but please, when you come to the point where you're budgeting, a script editor, Rachel, yes, can be international, but it depends on the requirements of the project, but we can't pay for them. We actually expect, when people come in for development, that they provide applicant contribution, and that doesn't mean we need you to put your hand in your pocket, but sweat equity can actually be, and that means if you've written to a point and you've come into us, your work doesn't go unrecognised. You just put that in your budget as part of your own contribution. The other thing in advanced development, it's a bit more open. And that's where advanced development, just to remind you, is where you have marketplace attachment. And so what that actually is we provide funds for getting it literally financed. So it can be for casting, it could be for international travel to a market to go and pitch, although not in these current times, but hopefully when we bob out and we're allowed to get back on the road again, can be for polish, can be for a director's pass, can be for pay for a line producer to do a budget and schedule. It's pretty diverse, and it literally will come down to, again, once you've read the guidelines, drop us a line or make a call, and one of the investment managers will gladly help you about that budgeting information.
Yeah.
The other thing is, there was a question about ACTF, which is the Australian Children's Television Foundation. They provide development funds, and we are more than happy to co-invest in development with ACTF, Screen Australia, ABC, SBS, Channel 7, Channel 9, any of those folks who put in money into development, although that's been coming harder and harder. We also co-invest with philanthropic groups like Shark Island Institute, the Documentary Foundation in the documentary space. Anything that makes sense to us, it's about leveraging development and jobs.
So just a reminder, we've only got about 8 minutes to go, so I think I'll just pull out one more question, then we'll do a bit of a wrap up. So this one, I could throw this to you, Mike. At the moment, as Sally outlined before, we've got one-on-one sessions for potential applicants to speak directly to screen investment managers. The question has got 9 votes, so it's the most popular question. It's coming from Andre Morton. So Andre wants to know, if you're applying for a one-on-one, what do you need to have to discuss at the one-on-one, which is outline, script, elevator pitch. So my question is, you've got 10 minutes with your investment manager. What do you bring? What's the best thing to bring to that conversation?
I think the most important document you can have for any pitch or any meeting, which would be true here and true if you're coming to meet me as a production company or the network, is the one-pager. And it's true for a number of reasons. One is the first obvious one is most folks don't have a lot of time. If you're going to a network head or you're going to the development agency, they're meeting with lots of other people, they won't have time to read a full script. They won't have time to read a full Bible. I will read a sexy one-pager, and that ability to distill your story down, hit the key beats, show me that you've got a natural engine to this story that'll make me care. If you can do that in one pager, that instills a lot of confidence. And your process of taking your big idea and narrowing it down to that pointy end will embed it in your head. So you'll be easier, more readily able to orally pitch it as well for having written it. So when I say what's it about, you've kind of got that one pager ticking over in your head. I think it's the number one document everyone needs to have front and center of any pitch or proposal.
Yeah, and I also think, building on that, is just have a few questions as well that are very specific to what you need to know to get your application in its best possible order. It's not really 10 minutes, needs to be very, very targeted, because, as you say, the investment manager, like myself or Sally, we might have another 5 people waiting to speak to us in, we've got 10 minutes and then maybe a 1 minute break and another 10 minutes. So it's speed dating, entertain us, but make sure it's meaningful and that you make sure you have some takeaways yourself. So, okay.
The other thing is to know directly what you want out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, work
and
out what
the important thing to point out, Sally, is that it is your first opportunity in a face-to-face environment, be it via Zoom or FaceTime, to establish a relationship with the investment manager. And it might be the first time you've ever met one of us face-to-face. So it's about engagement. It's about engagement and understanding that should we come on board, should you apply and you're successful, we actually begin to become your collaborators. So it's about finding some important level of engagement. So listen, we're down to the last 5 minutes. I'm going to throw to Sally next, and I'm going to ask you to perhaps summarise maybe your key top tip or top 3 tips for. Okay.
My first thing is to know who your audience is and know why you are making your project and know how to find your audience. Even if it's on YouTube, how do you get them? How do you get those people? One of the biggest problems we have is people saying, okay, this is for young men 15 to 30. Those guys don't, and it's a feature film, those guys don't go to them, don't go to the movies. You can't get them there. So they will pirate. So you need to work out if it's for them. How do you do that? How do you get to that place? The other thing is, I noticed there was a question from TAC about short films. TAC, Screen New South Wales doesn't fund shorts on its own, but we do via special initiatives. The other thing to mention is industry and audience development, which is also part of our Screen team, have attachments. So what you do is you sign up to the attachment register online on the Screen New South Wales site, and you can either be attached to a senior producer, if you're a producer, or a writer in a writer's room, or on a TV drama or a feature film. It's literally, and they are incredibly successful. Fadi Raboud, who started with us, who is one of our poster girls, started doing short films, then moved forward. She's now done, she's now considered one of the country's most successful feature film and, well, not features yet, she's on her way, but TV drama directors.
And Les Norton.
Yeah, Les Norton as well. So the other thing is literally crawl all over the Screen New South Wales website, not just in development, but everywhere else. There's all sorts of other amazing opportunities that, Matthew R. will get the link put up to the attachment scheme. And for everybody. And there are people whose questions we haven't gotten to, and we are very, very sorry for that. But what we'll do is perhaps if you'd like to email your questions through, and we will literally get to them as quickly as we can. We'll provide a response or give you a call or book in for the one-on-ones, and you can ask your questions that way.
Book in. And over to you, Mike. You've got 2 minutes. Top 3 tips.
I get three tips for a good story document, a good development process, and they might seem obvious, but you've always got to remind yourself. The first is make me care. Don't assume I will. Just because you like your characters and you're worried about them doesn't mean I am. Your document needs to make me care about their fate. We watch TV, we watch movies because we like to worry. That's what human beings do. We crave it. So make me worry. It doesn't matter if it's a romance, an adventure film, a sci-fi, it could be anything. Make me care. And that's got to be really evident right in the front. The other that I see all the time is story outlines that are essentially a dramatic flat line. They might have stakes, but the stakes don't change. On page 3 of a 5-page outline, the shit isn't really any worse than it was on page 1. And fundamentally, stories are about things getting worse. Again, a romance, a boy meets girl story, right through to an epic space fantasy over 20 seasons. The same principle applies. Stuff gets worse. So I want to see that in the outline. I want to see that, oh my God, and oh my God, oh, got that harder. Oh, that's more complicated. Like, keep it moving. And the third, number one, it's one of the most common mistakes I see all the time is know what medium your story is. I've seen so many projects pitched as a TV show that are not. They simply don't have an engine to sustain 6-8 episodes, let alone multiple seasons, which is what you'd most likely want. So I've seen too many projects that just feel like a feature film stretched into a series. The tip with pitching anything that's a series, and this is web series or TV series, is you pitch the engine of the show, not the plot of the show. Pitch the core drama that is almost unsolvable, which will keep that story going, not the individual plot line. Because I've read so many pitches where I go, well, that's 3 episodes and there's nothing left. And you've kind of crashed right there. So know what medium it is.
Yep. Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. So this is the moment that we are going to end the webinar. I wanted to thank everyone for coming along today for our 3rd webinar. Make sure you sign up for our next one, which is Business Planning for a New World. This is with Ian Murray, and you can register in the link we've just thrown there. Thank you for being part of the audience. It's a good reminder that making screen content is all about collaboration, and we're here to guide and support you in getting your passion project made or redesigned. A special and sincere thanks to the wonderfully talented Mike Jones for joining us today for all your incredible information and concepts and insights, and to my dear friend and colleague Sally Regan. Thank you very much. Hope to see you all again soon. And remember, stay well, be careful, maintain your distance, and be kind. See you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.